right now on 5 on Your Side at 10.
Two survivors of last week's deadly crash on a Greyhound bus have lawyered up. Tonight, their attorney is talking only to 5 on Your Side. The birth of the atomic bomb brought back to life in a new film.
This is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world.
Now local advocates hope it will put the spotlight on the nuclear fallout here in St. Louis.
They knew it was dangerous, but to them, that was part of science.
Severe storms rolled through earlier today, but we had a small handful of damage reports. We'll continue to monitor our trends overnight and already track a second round of rain headed for us in the next few hours.
And tonight, more than 16,000 Ameren customers are without power following the latest round of severe storms that moved through the St. Louis region this afternoon. Good evening, I'm Mike Bush. One of the hardest hit areas is South St. Louis County. We found several tree branches and power lines down in the Bellwood Park subdivision in Melville. One large tree fell onto a shed, crushing it. The homeowner says a large branch fell from the same tree during Wednesday's storms, damaging her neighbor's truck. She already had a tree removal company scheduled to come out tomorrow morning before today's storms.
They said they were so busy at this point because of so many storms going through the area and that. But since they felt that was so dangerous and that, they put me on priority to get here Monday.
Also caused damage in St. Charles and Warren counties. These are photos from Marthasville showing large tree branches down. Fortunately, no reports of any injuries tonight. All quiet right now in downtown St. Louis, but the Weather First team is already tracking our next round of rain. Let's get straight over to meteorologist Gary Frank for the latest on the timing.
Yeah, several days in a row of rain, but we try to avoid the severe weather threat. And a couple of times we've had some of these brief bursts of wind over 40, 50, even 60 miles an hour at times the last few days. That's been the issue right now. It is quiet, and I think as we head into the overnight hours, it should remain quiet. And while we may see a few thunderstorms, I don't think that we're going to see severe weather. Here's what it looked like today. They came very quickly. They left very quickly. You had a nice evening, but as I mentioned, some of those areas in South City, South County did get a brief burst of wind, and that was the strongest severe thunderstorm warning that we talked to you about briefly if you were watching the Gulf earlier today. It moved through very quickly, and that was probably the highest wind anywhere. Otherwise, our wind gusts were about 20 to 30, 40 miles an hour. You can see where most of those local storm reports were concentrated. Now we'll look off to the west. Now, this is even more severe. This is a pretty impressive thunderstorm south of Hayes and Dodge City and Wichita. That's not going to impact us as much, but we'll look around Kansas City for our next storm development over the next few hours. Right now, temperatures will continue to stay relatively mild. It's 77, a southwest breeze at 7 miles an hour. It's a little bit more muggy. We'll see that over the next few. There is more rain on the way overnight. Like I mentioned, it's not severe, but this active pattern continues, and we have even heavier rain possible early this week. We'll talk about some localized flooding and what we can expect as we're back into the mid-90s some days this week.
All right, Gary, thanks. New tonight, some of the survivors of the deadly Greyhound bus accident could be gearing up for a legal battle. So which corporation will ultimately end up being listed as a defendant? Our Christine Byers joins us now with an exclusive interview with one of the attorneys now searching for those answers and what's next for the victims. Christine?
Mike, 3 men died in that accident and at least 14 others were injured. Now, less than a week later, 2 of those survivors have retained local attorneys to represent them in their quest to hold someone accountable for the crash that their attorney says has changed their lives forever. The bus was on its way from Indianapolis to St. Louis when it struck 3 semis parked on the westbound I-70 exit ramp to the Silver Lake rest stop. In the hours that followed, victims told 5 on Your Side harrowing tales of survival, some even saying they were offered $2,500 just after the crash by someone from Greyhound. Brady Makinich of the Belleville-based law firm Hipskind and Makinich is now representing 2 of those who survived the crash. Makinich says there's still a lot of investigation that needs to happen before the lawsuit gets filed to find out exactly who is to blame. And he isn't surprised that the survivors were offered money so quickly after tragedy struck.
The second that an accident occurs or a collision occurs or something happens, they are working immediately to minimize the value of these cases, and that includes trying to settle them for pennies on the dollar of what they're worth. Can you imagine being involved in something that traumatic and being given a couple grand to say, hey, shut up, or hey, don't go get treatment? That's what they want. They want to prevent that sort of thing from happening. So it will be a long road, but I assure you we will hold them accountable.
Now, Makinich says one of his new clients is from Nashville, Tennessee, and the other is from Texas. We emailed Greyhound Bus Company, but we have not received a response.
Christine, thanks. Tonight, a 17-year-old boy is in police custody accused in the deadly shooting of another teen in North St. Louis County. The victim is also 17. The shooting happened inside a home on Ocean View Court yesterday afternoon. That's off Newhalls Ferry, just north of Lindbergh, and no word yet on what led to this shooting. This Tuesday marks 1 month since a deadly mass shooting in downtown St. Louis left one young person dead and almost a dozen others injured. The St. Louis Area Violence Prevention Commission is now offering up grants. The goal is to fund programs working to create long-term solutions to the city's teen crime problem.
I would say almost daily we get phone calls or emails from folks who are trying to figure out how they can be supported. We're looking for places in the community that can host events on a regular basis during hours that are accessible to teens and younger adults.
Now, since the mass shooting, the city expanded the hours of 2 rec centers, but organizers say only one of them has had strong turnout. If you want to send ideas or apply for the grants available, you can visit the As Seen on TV section on KSDK.com. Well, today marks 78 years since the Trinity test. That was the first detonation of a nuclear weapon in the Manhattan Project. A new Hollywood film about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, opens this week. It comes as momentum builds behind a bipartisan push for Congress to clean up nuclear waste contaminating Coldwater Creek. Tonight, our political editor, Mark Maxwell, talked with local moms fighting for years to raise awareness around this issue. Mark?
Mike, when people think about the Manhattan Project, most people might picture a southwestern desert or a war room on the Potomac. Few people think of St. Louis, where those volatile ingredients were first produced. Now, local activists hope the hype from an epic movie might shine a spotlight on the festering problem here.
The first atomic bomb explosion ever flashed across the New Mexico sky on July 16, 1945. 78 years later, the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, will flash across the silver screen. As moviegoers anticipate Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer debut, the previews hit close to home for Dawn Chapman.
Do you think you'll go see the movie?
Yeah, I do. I think I have to.
The movie scene is set at the 1940s era secret lab in Los Alamos, but the radioactive ingredients for that atomic bomb were built here in St. Louis. Classified records revealed just last week proved officials knew back in 1949 that the radioactive waste threatened Coldwater Creek.
It's so weird that they coincide, right? It's happening at the same time.
Chapman leads Just Moms to hold those companies and the government accountable for the health risks that followed.
This zip code has an almost 300% increase in brain cancer under the age of 18 that the state has identified.
As families prepare to pack the theater this weekend,
I just sat at Children's Hospital for one of my kids to get a pretty scary scan.
She hopes to draw their attention to the fallout that reverberates decades after the first blast.
You know, what happens if you're exposed to just little amounts over a long period of time?
Chapman is pushing Congress to act to clean up the radioactive waste and compensate victims and their families.
Why not? We went over and we helped clean up after the bombs that we dropped in Japan. But yet we're still leaving radioactive waste from the making of those bombs on our own soil.
She hopes the bright lights from some of Hollywood's biggest stars draw attention to her cause.
I have to believe everything's happening right now for a reason. And if there's a conversation to be had, a productive conversation to be had about this and anything to maybe be learned from this movie, then I think that we should do everything we can to be part of that conversation and help it along.
It along too. The federal government's plan to clean up Coldwater Creek is scheduled for a deadline of 2038. That's nearly a century after the federal government first launched the Manhattan Project.
Thanks, Mark. This week, Just Moms STL is hosting a community meeting on the dumping ground for that nuclear waste. They will discuss the EPA's report and plans to clean up contamination at the Westlake landfill. It'll be held Tuesday night at 6 at the Bridgeton Recreation Center on Fifi Road. Tonight, firefighters are blaming overheated brakes for a semi-fire along I-44. It happened early this morning near Doolittle, just west of Rolla. The trailer was carrying several 7,500-pound spools of copper. The driver was able to detach the cab and move it away from the fire, and no one was hurt. Tonight, a St. Louis priest is calling it a career after more than 6 decades ministering to the needs of the poor. Hundreds of people celebrated Father Bob Gettinger's service to the community at his retirement party this afternoon. Local officials came out to thank him for his years of service helping people in poverty.
He's known for doing energy assistance and making sure that the homeless was fed. So this is a servant leader.
You know, that's a lot of fun, you know, just giving money away, but trying to do it with a touch of class and joy and happiness. And that's just a good way to help people along when everything else is so messed up.
Father Bob is 84. He says he still has hope North St. Louis can make a comeback if the city chooses compassion over violence. Confronting the reality of hate.
I am concerned, but I am heartened by the fact that we're talking about it.
Tonight, the local museum making a difference by fostering empathy and compassion.
Yesterday, we showed you the same time lapse of the airport with bursts of rain and wind gusts over 50 miles an hour. Not quite as high today, but we'll still see active patterns over the next few days. Tracking our next chance for rain at the airport and everywhere else, and maybe a minor threat for flooding ahead.
In the face of rising hate, there's a place in St. Louis that you may have never heard of, but is worth your time. As you'll learn in tonight's Making a Difference report, a local museum not only shows you the devastating impact of discrimination, but promotes positive change.
They were from all over places: Hungary, Lithuania, Czechoslovakia, Poland.
In Creve Coeur, a somber history has found its sanctuary.
Some survived, some didn't.
Marking a time that should never be forgotten.
They lived their normal life, and then all of a sudden, boom.
All hell broke loose.
Yeah.
You're inside the newly renovated St. Louis Kaplan Feldman Holocaust Museum, where every tour begins with a gravity point.
That gravity point is what was the Holocaust. It's making sure that before we even walk in, we have an understanding of the depth and the magnitude of the events that we're about to engage with.
Step inside, and there are lessons to be learned at every turn.
Museums are spaces for questions, museums are spaces for inquiry, and museums are spaces for education, and that's what we came here to do.
While the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic murder of 6 million European Jews, in many ways this horrifying history is a deeply personal story.
So this is Evelina.
The pandemic prompted St. Louisans to sift through their closets and attics.
This is one of those very interesting artifacts.
And longtime archivist Diane Everman received dozens of new artifacts from the families of survivors, like this doll named Evelina.
She was given to one of our local survivors in Berlin right before Evelina, the little girl who lived down the street, was deported to Auschwitz and murdered there.
A tiny shoe is also an indelible reminder of the youngest victims.
This is a child's shoe from one of the killing centers. I find it really powerful. It's so little, it fits in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
It's just a little shoe.
There's a story behind every name here.
And then on the wall.
And in the final section of the museum, a projection of hundreds of survivors who came to St. Louis post-Holocaust.
When we began to think about opening a new museum, we knew about 300 names. On opening day, we knew about 800. And now we know well over 900.
Walking these hallowed halls gets you thinking about the nature of hate and injustice and the consequences of staying silent.
And that is the point of this museum. It's not just a history lesson. It's a lesson about us, about human behavior, and about how we change it.
Look how close they are.
Remembering the past and being empowered to learn from it. Going forward, what gives you hope?
I think what gives me hope is every day when I see people in this building.
The new St. Louis Holocaust Museum, reminding us all that we can and must do better. A deeper understanding of the consequences of hate can help us work towards a more inclusive and compassionate society. A reminder, if you know an inspiring story or someone making a difference, let me know by email at mbush@ksdk.com. Call it an outbreak of the summer sniffles. Summer colds are on the rise at a rate we haven't seen in years, And doctors believe pandemic precautions kept the viruses responsible for the common cold at bay. Meteorologist Gary Frank joins us now with the Weather First forecast. He's got the work week forecast, and Gary, I know we're expecting some more rain early.
Yeah, we're going to get some more rain. Last week we talked about the law of averages. If we have enough chances, we're finally going to start to get some rain, and that's where we've been the last few days, and we're kind of trending that way as well. Another day of rain. When we looked at the airport yesterday, you got a brief burst of rain and 54-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and we've seen these little isolated pockets of high winds with some of these thunderstorms that have developed upwards of 35 to 40,000 foot storms. They downburst that rain, and then they kind of rain themselves out, move on, or join into a larger complex. And that's what we've kind of seen over the last few days. And when you look at what went on today, temperatures didn't warm up all that much for this time of the year. We did get to 92, 90. We're going to get a little warmer over the next few days. It's 77 right now. But one thing I want to point out, we got 3/100 of an inch of rain. And while it doesn't look like much, and it's not, we'll take what we can get. We've had more over the last few days, and it's our 5th straight day of measurable rainfall. The longest stretch that we've had of measurable rainfall since June 24th through the 28th of 2021. So several days in a row of rain. That's positive. Like I said, law of averages last week, and I think the same thing, at least for the next couple of days, will continue. Even into the overnight hours, we may start to tack on 2 or 3 more days on that. Storms in central Kansas, but on the northern edge of this, it doesn't look like much right now. What we'll continue to see is feeding moisture into this little boundary. That's going to be the focal point for development overnight. So while we'll not see it for the next 2 to 3 hours, if you wake up in the middle of the night and hear rumble of thunder, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a few showers and thunderstorms develop right along that very line. 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Anthony will join you starting around 3 or 4 and keep you up to date. I don't think this is going to be severe, but it's another bit of rain that we'll have to contend with early, and of course see how that impacts with traffic with Paul after 5 or 6 o'clock. Temps overnight, scattered storms, 68 degrees. It's relatively quiet, but here over the next few days, you know, I still think it's pretty nice tomorrow afternoon. We may see a few isolated showers, but once again, the sun comes out. We'll try to get rid of that smoke. Air quality yellow tomorrow, but it was obviously very prevalent in our skies today. The other thing, as far as more beneficial rainfall, I think we're going to see the possibility Tuesday into Wednesday, and this is something Anthony will definitely have an update on for you in the morning, is the fact that we're going to see some area of very heavy rain develop, and it looks like it could be right over us Tuesday into Wednesday, as we're right on the edge of very hot, dry air, and storms develop right along that. So we'll continue to monitor that, but there's a trend that we could continue to see not only consistent heavy rain, but more rain on the way. So the next few days, let's watch Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll keep you posted on that. Then we're warm again, and then kind of steadying and dry for the end of the next few days.
All right, Gary, thanks. To humans, it's a breath of fresh, clean air. But are some popular household cleaning items putting your pet at risk? We verify. Pets are an important member of your home. Tonight, our Verify team looks into concerns some popular household products could be harmful to them. Here's Abby Larico.
For me, it's something bright and citrusy. Maybe you like crisp laundry or calming lavender. I'm talking about the scents we use to make our homes smell the way we like them. But can air fresheners be bad for our pets' health? Let's verify. We spoke with several experts and took a look at some research on the topic.
I would say in general it's good to avoid them.
Veterinarians Dr. Sage DeRosa and Dr. Audrey Weaver tell Verify even the best smells can be bad for animals with medical conditions.
Lung issues, so asthma, cancer, any of those things, heart disease, you should avoid using them in the home completely.
Tufts University research also shows some pets will be more sensitive to these chemicals and essential oils than others, like smaller and younger animals and cats. Diffusers emit a constant stream of droplets in the air, which can be especially irritating. But our experts agree fragrant candles and room sprays can also be problematic.
All these air fresheners will contain some kind of scent, and they also contain volatile organic chemicals, which allows them to diffuse in the air.
I've seen in my emergency pets hospitalized because, the parent was doing some cleaning, all the sprays, and then they get this really bad inflammatory reaction in the lungs and had to be hospitalized, for several days.
Tell your vet if health changes coincide with any recent scent changes around the house, and if your pet starts coughing or has breathing issues from a fragrance, air the place out immediately.
It makes me think about, if our pets are so sensitive, what is it doing to our lungs?
So we can verify, yes, air fresheners pose health risks for pets. And if those fragrance droplets collect on your pet's fur, paws, or skin, licking it off of themselves could make them sick as well. If you must use an air freshener, do so sparingly, with good ventilation, and away from pets entirely if possible. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
What would you like us to verify? Send an email to verify@ksdk.com. Meet me in St. Louis for National Ice Cream Day. Tonight, we melt away a local legend. Billions of dollars are up for grabs this week. There was no Powerball winner last night. The prize for tomorrow night's drawing has grown to $900 million. That's the 7th largest U.S. jackpot of all time. Tuesday's Mega Millions jackpot has grown to $640 million. Strolling the streets of downtown Alton today was like taking a trip back in time. The 26th annual All Wheels Drive-In Car Show featured nearly 200 classic cars, hot rods, and motorcycles. There was also live music and food. The event, you'll remember, was postponed from last month due to rain. And today was National Ice Cream Day. Local favorites like Fountain on Locust and Clementines celebrated with giveaways. Industrial ice cream production in America began in the mid-1800s, and many believe the waffle cone was invented at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. But at the very least, historians agree the fair put the ice cream vessel, a cone, on the map. And there you have it. 5 on your side at 10. Don't forget to start your day with Today in St. Louis. That begins at 4 a.m. Now, here's Frank Cusimano with Sports Plus.